Um, Hello and all, my name's John Clare,
And I am Roman Presh.
and this is the Post Watch Post Mortem. Thank you for joining us today in this lovely overcast day in Ireland. And today's video, the film we're going to be talking about, is a film called The Imitation Game. 2014 film, starring Benedict Cumberbatch and Keira Knightley, amongst others. And we thought this might be a good one because Roman actually suggested this, right? So because it was on Netflix, we thought we'd give it a go. But also last week, and we didn't actually do a post-watch post-mortem on this because we didn't want to. But having seen Oppenheimer,
Yeah.
I thought this is a very good kind of. It's there are similarities in the protagonists of both films. Both of them feature brilliant, eminently brilliant men who are ultimately flawed characters who are then persecuted after their contributions to the Second World War. In the case of Alan Turing, it would be the Enigma machine, the basically the machine that cracked the Enigma code, and in case of Oppenheimer, the creation of the atomic bomb.
The hydrogen bomb,
The atomic bomb.
Yeah, atomic bomb. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we thought that the fact that these two films would be, both in terms of the protagonists, very similar, and they're all both persecuted for different reasons after the film. After the war, they were both persecuted by their respective governments. And I think we can both agree, especially in the case of Alan Turing, abominably so. And yeah, I just thought, I think that's the where we're going with this episode, I think.
Yeah. Well, Oppenheimer was was giving the medal recognition after the war, when he was still alive.
Yes, whereas
And as
Alan Turing, because basically, like, for those who don't know, right, and I think this is one of the biggest fucking injustices in British history, in my view. Alan Turing, a war hero, a man who singularly was responsible for the cracking of the Enigma code, who is singularly responsible. You could argue singularly responsible for the defeat of the Nazis. Yes, of course there are other contributing factors, but were it not for his contribution, we'd all this podcast would probably be spoken in German. The man was obviously a brilliant mind. He's also responsible for the idea of the thinking machine or the Turing machine or computers. Without him, this podcast probably wouldn't be possible.
No, and you
Right.
watching it won't be able to on your little black
Black Mirror.
Black Mirror tablet.
Yeah, or phone or TV or wherever you're watching this on. The man was an absolute genius and someone I have the highest respect for. And basically, after the war, it was discovered that he was homosexual, and then he was chemically castrated because at the time it was illegal to be homosexual. And about a year or two after he was sentenced by the British government for indecency, he killed himself because of the hormonal treatment that he was put under in order to cure him of his homosexuality. Now, you could argue, because of the times and whatever else, but I still maintain what happened to that man was absolutely fucking disgusting. Especially for considering his contributions and the amount. I mean, Oppenheimer created the bomb, and we can all argue that without the bomb, there wouldn't be the high. You wouldn't have like nuclear energy programs, and everything else. But
In a way, what saved Oppenheimer was that his work was being published.
so was Turing's work.
No, it was never published. It was.
Yeah, it was. He was a Cambridge professor with, again.
But nobody knew about the Enigma machine after 50 years later.
No, but his papers on the thinking machine. Do you know?
Yeah.
He was a Cambridge professor who wrote papers on thinking machines. The whole Turing test. It was him who came up with it. So, yeah, his work. He was posthumously recognised by Queen Elizabeth II. I think back in the 1990s. I think it was.
Yeah.
Did it say that at the end of the movie?
Yeah, I think they said that Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah, so basically they recognised his contribution about half a century after he died, near enough.
Oppenheimer was recognized after the war as well. Yeah.
Yeah, much later after the war. I mean, I think he got some sort of Congressional Medal of Honor or something.
Yeah, but he was very old at that time.
I mean, it was nearing the end by the time he was recognised. I mean, both are brilliant men, and I think also what I find quite interesting is because the Imitation Game is very much a British film.
Mm-hmm.
Oppenheimer, despite being directed by a
British
British
director.
director
Yeah.
and with an international cast starring an Irishman playing Oppenheimer and Cillian Murphy, it is very much like an American film. And the two films are quite interesting in how very different they are.
Also, like one of the thing I like about Oppenheimer is it's way more stylized and they took more freedom of vision of like it's way more stylized than the Imitation Game,
Yeah,
and something that rely Imitation Game to the Imitation Game to emphasis like the time running out, the emergency. They show footage of World War Two. They show footage of the Nazi advancing, the Nazi army, stuff like that. Which is interesting that Oppenheimer, spoilers for Oppenheimer if you haven't seen. Like I'm gonna spoil a little bit on the movie. Maybe I just want to talk about the movie in general. Is that the Oppenheimer never show the Nazi side, never show He's always on the point of view of Oppenheimer.
yeah.
It's like never we saw the German, never saw we saw one like the war. Like nobody need to tell you what's going on because we all know in history what was going on.
Yeah, I think the two films, in terms of the way you could argue, like Imitation Game is a solid film. Right, in terms of it's got quality cast: Benedict Cumberbatch, Keira Knightley,
Mark Strong.
Mark Strong, Charles Dance. There's a pretty strong cast in this movie. But the thing is, with the Imitation Game, it's very much what you might call a typical biopic.
Yeah,
You know,
it's a classic biopic.
yeah, it doesn't have like with Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer's a lot more bombast. There's a lot more.
Nolan and Store like his like technique and vision, and sometimes like he just make he's not afraid of making something a bit more artistic. Like a bit
Yeah,
more,
I
like,
mean, I think with Imitation Game, it's a bit more by the numbers, and I don't mean that out of disrespect because the performances, especially Benedict Cumberbatch's performance, I think was really solid.
but like Imitation Game is is technically great movie. Technically,
It's
it's
technically
good.
a good movie. Yeah,
Technically a good movie, but Nolan is like way more artistic, way more like personal, or like it's there's so many moments of there's more artistic freedom in Oppenheimer than there is in.
I wouldn't say. I think the reason why there's probably there's way more. I mean, I don't know the budgets. I haven't got them in front of me. Do you know what? For a change, I'm going to fucking leave the iPad out.
The budget of Oppenheimer was 41 million.
No, it wasn't. It was over 100 million.
100 million? You
Yeah,
sure about that?
yeah, 100%. It was over 100 million. We even looked it up after after we
Oh,
watched it.
okay.
Yeah, it's well over 100 million. I'd say that I'm going to guess because I can't be asked looking it up, but I'm going to guess it's around about the 20-30 million pound mark.
Okay.
Reason being is because like one is clearly funded by obviously different funding models, different like if you've got the American studio model behind you with Oppenheimer, you have Syncope and you have Warner Brothers, where with Imitation Game, you had like
Studio.
I don't think it was Canal, it was more Film Nation.
Film Nation, yeah.
Yeah, and a few other. There was different kind of like you could tell like they took funding from like many different areas, whereas like with Warner Brothers just put the money in and distributed it and Syncope made it.
Yeah.
No, sorry, not Warner Brothers. Universal.
Universal, yeah.
But the thing is, like with the likes of Oppenheimer, like I said, because it has a much bigger budget, it can afford to be a bit more bombastic. It can afford to be a bit more kind of artistic and creative and whatever else. Do you know what I mean? Especially with some of the photography and some of the shots. I mean, I would say like I think with the Imitation Game, and I don't mean to be cruel when I say this, but it does look kind of like a TV movie.
It does a bit like a TV movie.
Do you know what I mean? It's like. You're entirely reliant on the performance of the cast and entirely reliant on the strength of the script. I think the script is perfectly serviceable. I think it was all right.
Yeah.
I think that like I said, the performances all around, especially by Benedict Cumberbatch, were really strong. And I think it was quite interesting that it tells Turing's story in a very sympathetic way. That he was a bit of a quirky genius, but then he kind of
antisocial kind of
person.
I
mean, I would wager someone of that level of brilliance was an absolute arse to work with.
Yeah,
and it kind of shows that at the start of the film, but then a couple of scenes later, through Keira Knightley's character, he brings him in some. Like she suggests like getting people to like you, and he comes in and he gives them apples and tells them a joke, and then they're all pals again. I don't know. I think
That was a bit a shortcut.
yeah. I mean, you can tell. Like I said, it's a bit by the numbers. That's the problem with it. I think.
It was a bit of a shortcut. So like, oh, we need to show a scene that he tried to approach them and then they become friends. That which doesn't work like that in real life. You know, like it's just take time to make friendship and stuff like that. But like the movie is restricted by the hours.
Yeah, the
he
runtime.
has. Yeah, the running time. So you have to make shortcut when you do a movie. Like yeah,
You do, but at the same time, like I think yeah, the Imitation, like I said, the Imitation Game is an okay movie. You know, I wouldn't necessarily, you know, I'm not going to turn around and say it's rubbish, but you know, I felt it was a little bit too drawn out. I felt like I don't know. I just you know,
Like-
I wasn't. I think the problem is I probably would have liked the Imitation Game more if I hadn't seen Oppenheimer first.
yeah. I see what you mean. I see what you mean. But like now you have to. It's a bit wrong to compare it to Oppenheimer, but the two story structure are the same. This is a drained mind that being betrayed by his allies. Well, the thing is, Oppenheimer never show you the enemy, because the enemy change so much during the movie.
Yeah,
So
true.
at the beginning, the enemy is a German. The middle is the Japanese, and when the Japanese gone, is the Russian. So like it's like it's the concept in Oppenheimer. The concept of enemies doesn't make any sense, because at the end, the only one who attack him personally, Oppenheimer and his crew, are the American government.
Yeah,
Which would have been a bolder move that the movie Imitation Game don't show us the Nazi, don't show us the war going on, and tell you that the enemy is actually is enemy and is the enemy of the what's the name of the scientist again?
Alan Turing.
And
Alan Turing.
Alan Turing was the British government who tried to kill them.
Well, the British government did fucking like try and step in and hamper him quite a lot because he was a bit of an obstreperous dickhead.
Yeah, so many times they tried to stop his machine because they judged that the founding that they put in it was not worth it the time. Like yeah,
Yeah, because the one thing they keep mentioning is £100,000. Now, £100,000 seems like it is a lot of money now.
at the time, and also
but-
like it was a struggling country who were trying to get every money into food or equipment or
Yeah, they were
like,
fighting a war.
yeah, they were fighting a war. So like
So-
yeah,
So the thing is, like, but the thing is, if you account, the point I was going to make was if you account for inflation, like £100,000 now is a lot of money. You know, it could get you a house or whatever. £100,000 back then, if you account for inflation, was a fuck ton lot more money. It was
also the war as well. Like yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, so yeah, you got limited resources, and you got £100,000 of 1939 money, not
Yeah.
2023 money. So you got the best part of a century of inflation to account for, you know, and so if you, I mean, I don't want to do it. You know, we could probably do it the maths, like pull out an app and stop the podcast, but if you. Let's just say £100,000 back. You know, £100,000 in 1939 is probably the equivalent of several million pounds now. So there's a huge. So it was a huge investment for the British government to invest in this machine, and it's the same with the American government putting in what $2 or $3 billion of 1939 money to go into the Manhattan Project, because you know, again, $2 or $3 billion then was probably about equivalent to about fucking several $100 million now. You know, it's a huge. $700 billion, billions of dollars, not just like 1 or 2 billion. So to give you an idea of the sheer amount of like financial capital and resources and manpower that was needed in order to make these projects viable. So yeah, I think, and also like I said, but I mean, both men were incredibly influential in the 20th century, and you could argue are singularly responsible for the world that we live in today, both in terms of Oppenheimer with nuclear technology and Alan Turing with computers. So yeah, I think, but in terms of the films themselves, like in terms of the Imitation Game specifically, good movie. Quite liked. Like I said, pretty good. I mean, it's only.
it was carrying by the cast. So yeah, it was a pretty good cast and pretty good story.
Yeah.
But it was technically good.
Yeah, technically good. I mean, it was well photographed. I mean, the one thing I will say about it, right, the big issue I have with the photography in this movie, because the thing is, what Oppenheimer did really well, right, is like the contrast between the black and white and the colour. Because what was it? Because initially we thought that it was like one was told. How did we? What was the?
So my theory when I came out of Oppenheimer was that it was actually I was actually right. The thing I said that's the first time is that the story does what did I say at the beginning, because I think I'm missing everything.
Because like my theory, because my theory was that the two stories, because it's Christopher Nolan and he does the whole timey-wimey, messy-wessy business. It was basically two stories told concurrently. One during the war and one post the war. One of the rise of Oppenheimer,
But
one of the attempted decline of
But
Oppenheimer.
the thing is, it doesn't work because
But
you see Oppenheimer in the future in color as well. Like
yeah, but also because then you spotted it where it's
Oh.
like one was told from the point of view of Oppenheimer where everything's in
color
color.
because he could see because he could see the biggest picture, and he was thinking, and the other point of view was said from the character of Robert Downey Jr., who was seeing everything in black and white,
Yeah.
and basically he saw his own political reason.
Yeah,
For example, when he saw him talking at the beginning of the movie, when he saw him talking to Einstein, and he's just say like, "Oh my God," he says something. He's just say something to Einstein to
turn him against
turn
me.
it against me and ruin my political career. And when you realize at the end of the movie that the thing they said had nothing to do with him.
Yeah,
This character was blinded by his. That was my first opinion. That was
Yeah.
his character was blinded by his own political
his view was because the thing is like,
agenda. Instead of saying the future, he's
Yeah.
saying his own agenda. Basically.
yeah, because the thing is like he had a very myopic view, a very black and white view, whereas Oppenheimer had could see things. Because another thing that was great about the Oppenheimer movie is that it often showed Oppenheimer like visualizing the future. Like at the start of it, when he was a young man in Cambridge University, he was looking at the possibilities of of breaking the atom, the energy it could release.
Yeah.
Then later on, it was like the results of the release of that energy, of the
You could
development of
you
that
see
technology.
the map of the world and the water the water effect. The what do you call it? The wave water
Yeah,
like
it's the
ripple.
sound wave.
Drop no. Like
Shockwave.
drop like when do you know when you see the rain falling into a lake?
Yeah,
What do you call those
Ripples.
Ripples. You could see the ripples on a map that was representing nuclear bomb exploding everywhere on the globe. As for the thing in the movie, that's a spoiler. There was a theory at the beginning of the movie that if they explode the first nuclear bomb, it will create a chain of reaction that will ignite the atmosphere,
Yeah.
and just the first bomb ever exploded would just unrobe the old planet on flame and destruction. And later on, they realize like, oh, it's talking to Einstein at that moment. They say like, oh, do you remember that theory that we say that if we explode the first nuclear bomb, it will be the end of the world by igniting the atmosphere?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, yeah, you proved that it was wrong.
Yeah.
And at the end, they say like, I think it's actually true. No, I think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because it was not because the nuclear bomb ignited the atmosphere. It was because the knowledge of the nuclear bomb and the access of it
Will destroy the world.
would destroy the world.
Yeah. Also, like, but the thing is, like, I mean, the Imitation Game did something very similar, where it told two stories concurrently. One of this police officer that finds Alan Turing's house being broken
It
into.
was 1950s or before 1950s.
1951 it was.
Yeah.
According to the film, anyway. This police detective, he goes in, he finds the house was burgled. It turns out it really, and Alan Turing didn't want to press charges because he didn't want. Basically, what happened was he hired a rent boy, and the rent boy then came along and robbed his house afterwards. So. There was this whole kind of and then you had the story of Alan Turing being recruited by the British government in order to develop the Enigma machine.
No, he was not recruited. He recruited himself into the project.
Yeah. But anyway, so but the thing was right. I think the big issue was I think it lacked the imagination to tell those stories because they were photographed very similarly. There wasn't really a very unless were it not for the 1951 1939 in Bletchley, 1951 in wherever
That's what
Manchester.
We never see that in Oppenheimer.
Yeah, you don't need to because it's all done visually.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Whereas
You know when you're in New Mexico, because you keep talking about New Mexico.
yeah,
and he
But
wants
and it's shown in the photography.
it's shown in Venezuela
But
in New Mexico.
But the problem is like they use the same colour palette. They kind of use this kind of teal and orange colour palette that I see. I can't get away from seeing that. It's really annoying. But they use the whole teal and orange colour palette throughout the entirety of the movie.
They should like maybe change for. Do you know? Do you like to have like a different color for like different timeline?
Yeah, exactly. So like for the 1950s, maybe have it in a use different colours and different hues, and during 1939 use different colours and different hues. And then it also told the story of him as a young man at boarding school, and the fact that he fell in love with a young man, and that young man then died. You know, there was that kind of like. So there's these three stories running concurrently, but the problem is like they're not visually distinct enough. They
Like-
kind of meld together almost.
I understand. Like for example, like in Memento, when the story is linear, everything is in black and white, and when the story is like going backward, is in color.
Yeah.
So which thing. But like I don't think, for example, Dunkirk have a story similar thing when you go through the past and the present, and it doesn't change.
Yeah, but
with,
the thing is,
photography.
the past and the present.
And also Oppenheimer like doesn't is the Oppenheimer is not because of the past and present and the color changes.
No,
It's-
that's not the point I'm making.
But like you would have liked to have like a different.
Yeah, I would like. Well, the point I'm making is like to indicate something with Dunkirk. Dunkirk, okay, yes, it again Christopher Nolan messing around with time, but the thing is, this was all happening during the Dunkirk evacuation. It's called Dunkirk. It's within that time period, but it tells stories from different points within that time period. So it makes narrative, if not linear, sense. But with the Imitation Game, I think while it's a very workmanlike movie, it's not like it's a technically good movie. It's got solid performances from a solid cast with a very workmanlike script. There's nothing about it that I feel elevates it. I just think it's a very kind of by the numbers biopic.
Yeah.
Whereas with Oppenheimer, and again, this is the problem of having watched Imitation Game for the first time, although it came out nearly a decade ago in 2014. This is my first time watching it. Is it yours?
That's my first time either. I
Yeah.
thought you watched it before.
No, I've never watched it.
I never
before.
watched it. Do you know the story of this
I know
man,
the story about Alan Turing, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I think. But yeah, I just think it's a very workmanlike movie. And when you come away from Oppenheimer and you see that there was that kind of visual flair and imagination. Now, credit where credit's due. Christopher Nolan is a once in a lifetime director. He's an absolute fucking genius.
He's a genius.
Do you know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. Again, he doesn't. Not all of his films are great. Tenet is fucking.
No,
a
we need to. I
mess.
think we need. Yeah, maybe it was a little bit too harsh with the net. But maybe we need to think about it like with retrospective a bit.
Or maybe we can rewatch it at some point. But but the time we watched it, and we did do.
I watched it twice. I watched it
once,
Yeah.
and I just thought it was a noisy mess.
It was like because it's more stretch and it's there's the one movie from Christopher Nolan that said like do you know what? Don't think about this. You know, like just let just feel it.
I don't.
It's a line in the movie. Literally, it's a line in the movie.
Oh,
Don't
okay.
try to understand it. Just feel it.
Right, yeah, like I said, I think with Tenet, it's just like because again, like Christopher Nolan likes to mess around with timelines. He likes to mess around with
Perception of time and
Yeah.
like there's a great I'm sorry, Dunkirk is a great movie.
Yeah, it is.
Memento is a great movie as well, and the rest of Christopher Nolan work is great. Even Tenet, I think, is a good
It's an ambitious movie.
an ambitious movie.
It's a massively ambitious movie. Like I just think it's one of those. Look, I'm not turning around and saying that Christopher. Not every film. Not every work of art an artist creates or is responsible for creating is going to be loved each and every time.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? If Christopher Nolan is the artist I think he is, and I'm pretty sure he bloody is, he's incredibly critical of his own work.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm incredibly critical of my own work. I mean, I assume I know for a fact the same with you. It's just like it's the nature of the creative process. I mean, you always want to kind of outdo yourself, and I think with Tennant, like he kind of got to that. He wanted to outdo himself, and I can understand that kind of that inclination to try and be better than what you've done before. But unfortunately, I just don't think it quite works in the main, and then that's not. I mean, that's not a fucking. that's not to say like Christopher Nolan suddenly isn't a great artist because one of his movies isn't as because I think, and to be honest with you, who the fuck am I?
Yeah,
But
true.
but just because I think one of his films ain't as good as a lot of his previous work, but then Oppenheimer comes along and blows my mind, literally, pun intended. It is a fantastic movie. I absolutely loved. I mean, like, I remember when we came out from watching Oppenheimer. I mean, I was on a fucking high coming out of that film.
But like, what's carrying Oppenheimer is the image, is the score, and the acting. What's carrying Imitation Game?
Again, I think with the Imitation Game, it's a good workmanlike film. It's very, it's there's nothing exceptional about it other than aside
For the
from
story?
the man that they're depicting in terms of Alan Turing. Aside from that, like the film itself is very workmanlike, very solid, very, but it's by the numbers. There's no real imagination to it. There's no real kind of, it's just telling the story of a brilliant man in a very workmanlike fashion. Whereas Oppenheimer was also like Alan Turing, a complete visionary, but being told by a visionary artist.
Hmm.
That's the difference. That's like to say that you know like Christopher Nolan is anything other than a genius to my mind is an anathema. The guy is a fucking phenom.
Hmm.
And to say, I love his work. I've been a big fan of his work since Memento. Like the first movie I watched of his was Memento. Then obviously got involved with the Batman movies, Inception. Help me out here. What other ones?
Interstellar.
Interstellar. Oh, yeah, Interstellar. Interstellar was one of those movies where I kind of liked it right up until the end. Then it went a little. Then it kind of lost me.
Ah, it did lost you. I did. It never lost me.
Like the end
The,
where
the
like,
theory that love, basically the only reason that he could save humanity and give up the solution for anti-gravity thing was a love with the daughter,
yeah,
that connects thing. That's where he went a little bit like, I understand, like he went,
yeah,
because in the movie the thing like, yeah, like in the movie one of the actresses, that we can control love and stuff like that. Yeah, it was just set there to show that the end of the movie in the Tesseract, so he can like help his daughter.
yeah.
So the movie, like I think you misunderstood the movie for what he was telling you.
Oh, mate, well, I've only watched Interstellar once, so I'm perfectly willing to reevaluate my position on it.
Yeah,
You know, I've,
yeah. Like it's one of the movie where it's like, oh, we forgot about Inception. Did you mention Inception?
of course, I mentioned Inception.
Inception, yeah.
Inception's fucking fantastic.
It is fantastic.
It's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant film.
And it also the same. It's like it's letting go of like our feelings and stuff like that. Like that's what I like about Christopher Nolan. Like he can show you a movie about space, but then leave a message about love and connection into
Yeah.
it. Or that's why we the same for Ad Astra as well. Like you talk about this movie with this guy. He's like crossing like great distances to reconnect with his father.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like it's, sometimes a movie can be a bit more than what is on paper, like, you know.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing with great art of any kind.
Subtext is important.
Subtext is important. Context is important. There's a lot of things that you can kind of pull from it. I mean, I think that's the thing. I mean, like with Oppenheimer, I think that's what elevates it. Because there is it's just like, yeah, the intelligence behind it, the creativity behind it. Like again, I can't praise that movie highly enough. It is absolutely fucking phenomenal. But with the Imitation Game, it's just like I said. I mean, aside from the fact that it tells a story of a brilliant individual absolutely fucked over by the government.
By his own people.
Yeah, basically. Like, I mean, to call Alan Turing a war hero is a bit of a fucking understatement. Do you know what I mean? He was one of the most instrumental people in basically Britain the war.
In the movie, he was like at the beginning he came into the Enigma program to because it was a puzzle that he liked to fix. He told you like he was not like he didn't care about the war, like
Yeah.
because he knew that it would be the German or the British, he will be persecuted the same. Like yeah, he has no love for both of them because they both have no love for him.
Yeah, very true.
It's very true. Like yeah, it's
Because like homosexuals are literally sent to concentration camps.
and is a man who live alone all his life because he knew he couldn't trust anybody. Like
And he couldn't be true to himself.
yeah, so
Because there's that whole thing during there's a whole thing where he proposes to Keira Knightley's character, and
that was the first contact, like real human contact he ever have in his life. Because when
well,
she
there was
no,
was that friendship he had with the young fellow during his
yeah,
time
but like
boarding
that's
school
just
as well.
I'm talking during the movie, not the flashback, but like during the movie.
Well,
When
the
the
flashback is part
I
of the
know,
movie.
I know, flashback of the movie. Can you please let me finish? Um, so when that scene that the character of Benedict Cumberbatch saw that woman that being like pushed away to the room because
Yeah.
because because of the physical, because of who she is, she couldn't be part of this program. So like the secretary, the gentleman tell to the lady that the secretary office is upstairs. You have no business to be there, like stuff like that. And she was talented, and she was the smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
And that's why he make a connect to her because in the character of the main protagonist, he saw that the this woman was like cast away and being like repressed and like
Yeah. Because she
so
was a woman.
just because she was a woman, and yeah, so that was the only that was a great like relationship. Like he started to trust somebody. Like
Yeah. Probably for the first time since then.
since then,
Yeah.
since this relationship with this
With the young man.
Christopher.
Yeah. Christopher, which was, I mean, the fact that, I mean, you can't necessarily say that that wasn't important either because he named the fucking machine after him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And, we find out later on in the movie that unfortunately the young man died of bovine tuberculosis, which is a tragedy.
Or maybe he wasn't because he was quite healthy. Like when every time we saw him.
Yeah, well, we weren't to know. He didn't know, but it was told to him that I understand you were quite close, but after he finds out the information that your man died, that someone he had genuine affection and care for,
Or maybe
he shut himself off.
Maybe he didn't die because of that. Maybe they tried to cure him from his homosexuality and died in the process.
Yeah, but that's making suppositions, and we don't know about suppositions, and no one's going to do that. Look, to be honest, it said bovine tuberculosis. So, as in terms of like what's being told to you, I don't really like that's the information presented. So we'll go with the information presented.
Great shot. Thinking of that is when Oppenheimer knew about the death of his mistress, and he told him that she wrote a letter not signed. And that she drawn herself in, took some medication and drawn herself into the bathtub. And from the point, like when Oppenheimer imagine the scene, he imagined her like maybe, or maybe we could just shorten up the podcast because I don't think it's gonna stop soon. But like, yeah, you can see Oppenheimer like the great shot of Oppenheimer like thinking of what's going to happen, and you could see the pity. You see her like killing herself, but you also see a shot of her with two gloves drowning herself. So because it was a theory, he was working in the work of theory and the thing. He was imagining all the possibilities that could have happened to her.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, I mean,
and you never know the truth.
Yeah, true. But the thing is, like, you can't. Yeah, that's the thing, though. Is like with Imitation Game, it's a workman-like movie. So whatever information is presented to you is what's happening.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas with Oppenheimer, because of the character, right? Because they depicted the character of Oppenheimer being a literal visionary, someone who could envisage the ramifications of certain decisions, whether it is splitting the atom, whether it is the release of a nuclear bomb, and how that would then how that could then possibly like affect the world. That's the difference between the two films. One is elevated by using those visual cues to indicate the type of character he is, whereas everything in the Imitation Game was very much like, here's information as presented, you take it as read.
The movie was shot like a book.
It was shot, like I said, I think it's like a slightly high budget TV movie.
Yeah.
It's you could see it being serialized on the BBC.
Yeah, it could have been serialized. Yeah.
Yeah.
It took way more time to develop the character. For example, the friendship between his colleagues kind of been taking a bit more time. Go for it. They're
Less.
just 4 apples and a joke. You know, like
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot more than that to kind of develop relationships, especially when the
trust and
yeah,
in the
trust.
moment of war and like basically they were like, yeah, people are dying right now. Like what you're doing is not helping us. And how do you convince them to help them? Giving them an apple and tell them a joke.
Yeah,
That's a bit reductive.
yeah, it is a bit reductive. But the thing is, like, again, you know, we mentioned earlier on right, with cinema, you're limited by running time, so you need to find different devices. Now, those like, I'd say that is like what happened like, with Imitation Game, like that one scene. That's almost like a theatrical device.
Yeah.
You know, something that would be used in theatre. Whereas, like with Nolan, because he has such a great understanding of the mechanics of cinema
You know.
and what can be told visually, you know, it's like show don't tell. You know, sometimes you need to and it takes someone of the caliber of Christopher Nolan to be able to take a concept and be able to visualize it. Like the whole thing we'll talk about Interstellar with they got what's his name they got a astronomer in. I can't remember the dude's name off the top of my head now, but they got him in to kind of to help visualize the black holes, right? And those black holes are now those are what we use to show what a black hole is. It's because of the work of Christopher Nolan and in that film, and that was done in the lead up to that film.
Yeah.
Right, so this is where like Christopher Nolan kind of stands out from most other directors. He's a visual director,
Yeah.
and he understands cinema so implicitly. So you don't get workman-like films. Even when he misses, his films are still elevated above about probably 95% of other filmmakers. You know, he's a once in a generation. I mean, the man is a phenom. So that's where Imitation Game, like I said, it's a workman-like movie. It's got a very kind of, it's not ambitious. You know, it doesn't have that level. I mean, like you could argue, oh yeah, they probably didn't have the budget, but then sometimes it's not even the budget. You can do amazing things with very little.
Yeah.
Like
Get some interesting angle or try to tell a story visually is like it's not about budget. Really.
no, it's not about budget. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, having a big budget helps, but then, you know, we watched Attack the Block recently.
Yeah.
Right, that film was made for about £12 million. No, sorry, £8 million. 8 million quid, and they still managed to create monsters that were both unique and terrifying. You know, because they knew the constraints they had. Creativity is born from constraint. So, when you look at how much, when you look at the quality of the people involved, the vision, right. So you could say Joe Cornish is a good visual director because he understood. Like the one thing we kept commenting on with Attack the Block is the way it was telling its story visually, and it told its story in 90 fucking minutes.
Yeah.
You know, and it still got to point A to point B, bang. Now, don't get me wrong, it is an apples to oranges comparison.
Yes. Sir.
But the point I'm making is like, just because you don't have a huge budget doesn't mean that you can't be incredibly creative and tell stories in visually interesting ways. And I think with the Imitation Game, it just completely lacks ambition.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly. Yeah.
You got this wonderful subject matter in the life of Alan Turing, one of the fucking intellectual titans of the 20th century, who again is a war hero, literally a fucking war hero, who decrypted the Enigma code, who, although the Americans in the 90s did try and like rewrite history with the Enigma machine. I think it was called the Enigma machine, started Harvey Keitel, where the Americans did it. No, they fucking didn't. But yeah, like the man was an absolute fucking genius, and they have this rich tapestry to work with, and what do? They produce something completely workmanlike. And I think it's a shame. Yeah, like I said, good cast, and the performances were really good. Benedict Cumberbatch especially, excellent performance. But in terms of like telling a story about such an amazing person, and to do it in such a kind of like I say workmanlike manner, I think does the man a disservice. Myself.
Like at the time he was not maybe the service, but now you compare it to Tenet, to Oppenheimer, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I mean they are night and day films, and I think this is the big problem of watching the Imitation Game after that, because the subject matters are so similar. Again, two brilliant people
Yeah.
who are singularly responsible, both of them, for the end of the Second World War. One, in terms of dropping the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Don't get me wrong, they are fucking. That was.
No, but like
A,
what's a bit sad about Oppenheimer is like basically they tell you that the war was they what Oppenheimer did with the nuclear bomb. It didn't stop the war in Japan. It just shorted it.
well, basically, like the idea was they were going to drop two bombs, and they even said it. Matt Damon's character even said it. They're going to drop one bomb to show they can do it, and drop two to show they can keep on doing it. That was the idea, and it was after the second bomb that Japan surrendered completely. Because it was either that or the Americans would go for a full-scale invasion of Japan, which would have, as you rightly say,
And the
extended.
war, but like cost more lives.
Oh yeah, cost way more lives.
More American life because at the end it only cost a Japanese life.
Yeah, true. It only cost Japanese lives, but at the same time, like when you think about it in terms of like a guerrilla warfare that would go on like Vietnam did,
Yeah.
like how many, not just American lives, but in terms of Vietnamese lives, if the Americans had invaded Japan. That would have been absolutely fucking catastrophic.
Also, Oppenheimer didn't end the war because he basically created the Second World War.
Well, the Cold War.
The Cold War, sorry.
Yeah, so he ended the Second World War. He ended one war, but ended up fucking
Starting at the beginning of the second one, the arm race to nuclear like weapon.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, because as you said earlier on, like the enemy kept shifting. Even as the Manhattan Project
Always shift. It's never the same.
No.
Like even during like he's not even finishing his bomb. Did Germany already surrender? But they keep on doing it because the Russians are behind it.
Well, the Russians were the Russians were developing their own bomb because of spies and
because of the work of the German. Like they just take what had happened at the end of World War II. A lot of the German research I think end up into Russian hands.
And American hands.
And American hands also. And they basically it was at the beginning it was a race against Germany and America to make the atomic bomb. And the first one to split the atom were the
Germans.
The Germans. They managed to split the atom, and so basically the Russians are basically taking from that and build their own atomic bomb out of it.
That's right.
So it was never. Do you know what? Even if there was a spy among them, they would still have managed to with the information that they have.
Yeah, I think to be honest with you though, I mean like, you had brilliant people throughout the late 19th and early 20th century coming up with theories of energy and electricity, and developing the theory of splitting the atom, all that kind of thing. Like Albert Einstein was the man singularly responsible for a lot of modern physics. Then you had what's his name? There was a British scientist who came up with quantum theory. Fuck, what's his name again? It's really going to annoy me now. It's not Crick, is it? I can't remember. But anyway, there was like it was the thinking of intellectual of mathematicians throughout Europe and America and all over the world and Russia, everywhere else, that led us to where we are now. And it's because of these brilliant minds that we have these terrible weapons. And I don't know. Like I think, yeah. At the end of the day, all of that, you could argue a lot of it was inevitable.
Also, there was you're right. All that was inevitable. Yeah.
At some point or another. Yeah. You're right, man. You look tired.
No, I'm very tired. But like, one thing in Oppenheimer that I really like is like, you're gonna have the pre-Nobel for like nuclear, like doing like a mass destruction, like bomb or stuff like that. Like, the Nobel Prize was created by the man who invented TNT. Like,
yeah. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Not Alfred Nobel invented TNT. That's right.
TNT, like the chemical, the chemical that can, boom.
Yeah.
The boom chemical.
Yeah, exactly. So he invented TNT, and then we had, then we took our knowledge and made it worse, by making it better.
Which first was a work for is it was to make fertile like thing. Fertilizer, yeah. Yeah, he was going to make fertilizer or stuff like that. He ended up finding TNT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing is like a lot of scientific discoveries end up having unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Both good and bad. Like with Alan Turing, his theories on the thinking machine, the Turing machine, or the computer, as it's now known, Like it was his like it was his like papers and his thinking and his writings that enabled us to be where we are in the modern world. The same applies to Alfred Einstein. The same applies to Robert Oppenheimer. You know, these, like I said, they're intellectual titans that both like affected the world both positively and negatively.
Marie Curie as well.
Mary Curie,
Yeah, discovering thing. Or
she actually discovered through her research with radium the nuclear decay.
yeah, nuclear decay. Yeah, and also what's the name of the creator of the vaccine? Can't remember right now.
Nor can I.
Yeah, can't remember right now. But like, yeah, there's so many like
Yeah,
scientific discovery. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. You're right, mate.
I'm
You look
okay.
at it. You
I'm
look a
okay.
bit tired, dude.
The movie kind of nosy me like a bit. Like, yeah.
In what sense?
I feel a bit tired. Like, yeah, that's fine. It's okay. I'm fine. I think we should end up there. Or you want to say anything else?
Well, I'll tell you what, getting back to the
The
film,
movie, yeah.
Getting back to the film. I mean, like in terms of giving it a score, and I'm sorry about this, but like I said, I think it's very workmanlike, and I think it's an okay film. The Imitation Game. The Imitation Game, I'd probably give that about 6.5, 7 maybe.
I will agree. I will agree to that. Yeah.
Oppenheimer on the other end.
It's a highly recommend.
Oh, that's a 10. That's a 10 out of 10 film. I mean, I don't like usually giving that fucking score, but from my first watch of it anyway, I probably will evaluate it down at some point when I do watch it again. But right now,
for now, 10 out of 10. Yeah.
oh fucking hell yeah, man.
So once I said to one of my friends, it was the best movie he ever made. Better than Interstellar. And I said like, yeah, visually, way better than like visually. Like, you know, the story is not as exciting as Interstellar,
No,
but visually, it's just like it's just 100% visual. Like, I know that Interstellar is beautiful, Tenet is beautiful as well, or Inception is beautiful as well. But the thing, this work on the mind of the character and visualization of their mind, of what they see, what they think they see, what they imagine, it's amazing.
yeah,
All this work is amazing.
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, this is what, as I said, I mean, that's what I think elevates the likes of Christopher Nolan.
Like Oppenheimer really puts you in the head of your character and see what they think. It's not even see what they imagine, it's see what they think, what their emotions are right now. Do you know, like, if they put visualization on emotion.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I mean, this is the thing. This is the problem of coming. I mean, I've said this a few times, and I'll say it again. That the big problem of coming away from having just watched Oppenheimer a few days ago, and then watching The Imitation Game now, like again, the two films you can draw parallels between the two films in terms of stories being told because they are very similar, but one is very workmanlike and one is very, you know, it's a solid film. It's okay.
Artistically more challenging. Yeah.
Well, it's not even artistically challenging. It's
No, I
just
mean, like it just gives more to you, to the reaching
Oppenheimer.
out. Oppenheimer gives just more to you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
That the movie, that the Imitation give you. The Imitation Game give you what you ask for.
Yeah.
You want the story of this man? We give you the story of this man. And Oppenheimer is like, we give you the story of this man and his mind and his relationship, and so like, and you just like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they're basically like, if you like, they're complete. They take a similar subject matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, both films. One is point A to point B. This happened and 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 this happened. Do you know what I mean? It picks certain aspects. It might elevate them slightly in terms of dramatic effect, but it's a very workmanlike movie, and it's fine.
But
But Oppenheimer
it's the same, but like it's visually,
yeah,
like 100% visually, 100% like the music, also the score is like amazing, and the actor. It's the same thing, but Nolan just put 10, like put the dial to 10 on anything. Like,
yeah.
On the story, 10. On the acting, 10. On the on sometimes you just have to put the dial on the story, and that's it. The story and the acting, and that's it. No, that's not it. Like the visual, you can be more creative. The score, you can be more creative. Just like you can always be more creative.
Because
I think we should. Yeah, we're gonna stop it there.
No, not just yet. Hold on a second.
Go on.
There's something I just want to compare something quickly before we wap this up.
The budget.
No. I want to talk. Okay, Morton Tyldum is the director of The Imitation Game. All
Yeah.
right, and I'm gonna try.
What was his
Let's
work?
have a look. Let's see what work he's done. Morton Tyldum, Silo, Defending Jacob, Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan, Counterpart, Passengers. He directed Passengers, Headhunters. There's nothing there that really jumps out at me. Right?
No, it's a good British
No, he's
director.
not British. He's Morton Tyldum. I'd say he's probably from Scandinavia, but judging by his name. Height, Children, Bergen, Norway. He's from. He's a Norwegian director. All right. So this, all right, Bergen. If you put Oppenheimer in the hands of Tyler Malden, you'd get something very similar to The Imitation Game.
You get something flat. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Boris, if you put Turing in the hands of Christopher Nolan, you get something like Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Do you know?
It'd be amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine Christopher Nolan doing Imitation Game? It would be amazing.
Mate, it would be fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because like
The music, the ticking, he will have took the ticking of the machine and make like a score out of it.
Yeah.
A bit like in Dunkirk.
Yes.
It will have like it would have been more interesting.
yes,
what I mean.
100%. This is the thing. It's like this. I think. Do you know what it is we're trying to get to? Right. Here's what I think we're trying to get to.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to rush to the end of the conclusion because I think we are trying to get to a point here.
Yeah.
Right. I think. Right. You look at like the two. Like I said, the two films take very similar subject matters. Right.
Yeah.
And they tell essentially very similar stories.
Yeah, it's like one character and his work on the humanity and his relationship with his
his project,
with his loved ones, also with his loved ones and his friends. Yeah,
Yeah.
and friend that betray him or friend that try to be friendly with him, but at the end, like
Yeah, there's like all the
enemy.
interpersonal relationships and
the
everything
enemy
else.
is probably closer to you than you think.
Yes,
There we
all
go.
of that, but it's got all there's a tapestry there that you can really weave. But the thing is, you got one director who I'm sorry is basically a paint by numbers, workmanlike director.
One scene, for example, when he realized who is the spy in the thing, he realized this by looking at the Bible and reading one text. You know, like
Yeah,
Christopher Nolan would have made something a bit more amazing.
yeah, he would have done undoubtedly.
And Christopher Nolan would have left clues around, like for you to find out.
Yeah, and only that.
And when it hits, you say, "Oh no,
Yeah,
it is a spy." And when he give you the ultimatum, it's like, and the movie cancel everything. Do you know that the spy was this guy that he's working with? Because
Yeah.
at the end, like the guy of the MI6, like, "Oh yeah, we knew it." It's just cancel the thing.
yeah,
There's no it's just like, oh yeah, like well, so it's not a problem because basically every time he was giving information to Russia, they were basically counter
Yeah.
information it.
exactly. I mean, like
There was like, yeah, okay, well, okay, it's not a problem. Do you see that big spy thing that could be very a problem in the next minute? It could bring like destruction into the team, like because the guy is a spy. You know he's a
Yeah.
spy, but you need to work with him, otherwise you will tell him that he's homosexual. No, it's cancelled. Just cancelled. Like it's
So basically, like any kind of opportunity for there to be like dramatic tension within the story, it just
cancelled.
cuts itself off at the knees.
yeah.
You know. So yeah, I just think that I think you got
I thought it's maybe there was maybe it's more historically correct at what happened,
maybe so, but I think the thing is like when you got
but it's less interesting to watch.
the thing is like you can use artistic license, especially when you're telling someone when you're telling a story in the way that it's done. But things like there's ways to use artistic license, and I think that I think this is the difference between an artist and an artisan.
After you don't want to change Imitation Game into an action movie.
No, you don't. But Oppenheimer's not an action movie.
It's not an action movie.
But it still manages to be this operatic, bombastic, unbelievable story.
yeah.
Whereas like Imitation Game is, well, that was okay.
But like I think at the time, because at the time of the release of Imitation Game, there was no Oppenheimer. And I think if the guy who created the movie watched Oppenheimer before he made Imitation Game, he would have made a different movie.
Maybe, but I
Because
think...
Oppenheimer told you, so like you can make a biopic exciting.
But yeah, but also, you got to bear in mind, and this is the thing, this is where Christopher Nolan is, like, in terms of his creative vision and everything else. I mean, I'm sure that you can level a lot of criticisms at him, but you cannot argue the fact that he is like I said, he's a once in a generation director. In terms of his, understanding of not just cinema but visual language. Like you said earlier on about how how he depicted Oppenheimer's ability to visualize not just the
Oh, it's not the only
impact.
character who has like yeah.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is like the way that he showed that the intuition and insight that Oppenheimer he might not have had this kind of intuition. Maybe he did. We don't know. We never met the
But
guy.
like the thing
But
is, are you talking about that scene when a mistress is announced to him that she died?
oh yeah, no, I'm not talking about that in particular. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. He
You
visualized.
see all the
He
possibilities.
says also, but that's the thing. This is where Christopher Nolan elevates this. Right, the fact that he's able to give you these possibilities, the fact that he's able to kind of tell the story, and sometimes leave you, leave those possibilities there, and how those thoughts impact the character and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like the fact that he's able to do that, whereas this Tyler Mordum dude, I mean, like. It wouldn't have mattered if you'd seen Oppenheimer beforehand.
Oh, maybe.
I don't think because and I'm not saying to discredit your what you just said there, but I just think that like Christopher Nolan's exceptional.
He is exceptional.
Do you know what I mean?
And maybe if there is no Imitation Game, we probably never had Oppenheimer.
Maybe who knows?
Maybe by Christopher Nolan watching Oppenheimer, he decided maybe I'll do better than that.
You mean Imitation Game?
Imitation Game.
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan seeing Imitation Game, he will have said to himself, I can do better than that.
Yeah, maybe who knows?
I can do better than that.
And
hopefully, like we'll see. Maybe I hope that in the future, this story will be retold in the movie, but not by an American remake, like Americanized version again. But like I would love to maybe in the next 10 years when this movie will die off a little bit in the memory of people, somebody will go back to that story and make a new movie.
Well, the thing is, like, I mean, like Imitation Game, from what I understand, like won awards and stuff. I think won a few BAFTAs and that. And I think like Benedict Cumberbatch actually won awards for his portrayal because again, like in terms of the performances of the actors, I mean, you can't fault them.
Yeah.
And you can't. But I just think that it's again, I don't think it's an exceptional film.
No, it's not.
It's
academically correct.
Yeah, it's
correct. It's correct.
It's a workmanlike movie that tells a story, point A, point B, blah blah blah. This happened and this happened and this happened and this happened, and the possibility. I just think what Oppenheimer brings home compared to Imitation Game is it makes you realise that if you get the right person in charge, who tells the story, he can elevate that story to such a level that when you come away from it, your mind is absolutely blown, and that it's possible to do that. You don't necessarily have to be so mundane.
Standard.
Yeah. Have a bit of visual flair, use a bit of artistic license, employ a bit of creativity, and you get something as amazing as Oppenheimer. Because both those, like I said, when you get back, the men themselves, both J. Robert Oppenheimer, and Alan Turing, both were brilliant men that were responsible for, that in their own way were responsible for the end of the Second World War.
And they were judged for their for what they believed in.
Yeah.
Yeah, they both were judged by what the Oppenheimer was believing in a more like socialist, more
he was interested in intellectually, apparently.
Yeah, it was interesting about the idea of socialists,
Yeah.
like of people being equal and thing, and the character of Imitation Game.
Alan Turing.
And Sharon was homosexual and prosecuted.
Yeah.
But his character never believed he will see the end of that prosecution. Or then Oppenheimer will see there was an alternative to capitalism and to the world we're living in.
Yeah, I mean, basically, they were men of not just of their time, but ahead of their time.
Yeah.
And both are singularly responsible for the world that we live in today. I mean, along with a lot of other intellectual titans, but you can point to where their work directly impacts us in 2023.
But he never fought for his the men we're talking about in Michigan never fought for the right of homosexual or stuff like that.
No, he didn't, because he was not that kind of character.
He was not that kind of character. He was not somebody. He doesn't like fight. He tell you in the movie he doesn't like fight.
Yeah.
That's not the thing. Is he despises fighting.
Yeah.
He despises war and he despises fighting.
Because he quite right. I mean, in fairness, he does say quite rightly. Like in terms of violence is very satisfying. You know what I mean? Getting to a fight and beating someone up is very satisfying until like the adrenaline run right until the adrenaline leaves your system, and then you have to deal with the consequences.
Yeah.
You know, um, and that's true whether you're in a one-on-one fight with someone or you're in a like fucking world war. You know, violence is only satisfying until the consequences set in. But yeah, I mean, like that. I don't know. I just don't. I think there was so much potential to be had within that story and within the character, with not just the character but the person that was Alan Turing. You know, and I just think it lacked imagination. It lacked je ne sais quoi, so to
A
speak.
flair. It lacked
Yeah,
flair. It lacked flair.
it massively lacked flair. All right then. What should we do now? How long have we been going?
It's an hour now.
Just over now. Okay,
Yeah.
that's cool. Do you want to round it out there?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay then. So, I'm just to before we wrap it up. I'm just going to say again, Oppenheimer definitely a 10. Imitation Game, unfortunately, I'd go about 6.5, maybe not even 7.
But
I'd say
it's
6.5.
also like I want to say something. It's also unfair to judge it against Oppenheimer.
I'm not necessarily judging it against Oppenheimer. I'm judging it as a film.
Yeah.
Like I just think it's as a film itself. I just think it's very workmanlike. I think it's Oppenheimer is a 10 because of how brilliant the film is. The Imitation Game is
But
to me 6.5 because
would you give him a 6.5 if you didn't know Oppenheimer?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
honestly I would do because I just think it's a very workmanlike movie. I think it's okay. It tells its story in a very kind of workmanlike. I just think it's workmanlike.
Yeah,
You know,
standard.
It's
Like,
standard. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't. I didn't come away from it fucking feeling elevated. I don't come away from it like being particularly excited by it or buzzed by it or anything like that. I just thought, yeah, okay, that's
It's
fine.
like when you read a book, like or like yeah, not
Yeah.
even like yeah, but like sometimes you can be excited and elevated when you finish a book, like but yeah, it's like reading a biopic. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's it. It's just a very kind of by the numbers workmanlike movie, and I think 6.5, maybe 7 at a push. That's me.
that's it. Okay,
What do you reckon?
same, exactly same. I agree. I
Okay,
agree to
fair enough.
everything.
All right, okay, I'm relieved to hear that. All right then. Thank you very much for watching. We both very much appreciate it. My name's been John Clow.
I've been Ronan Prish.
This has been the Post Watch Post Mortem, and we'll see you next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye bye. Sorry. I'm not tired. I'm just like dozing off like a bit.
Yeah.
Come on, you can do it. There we go. Goodbye. Now recording. What? Oh yeah.